The repeal of Roe v. Wade last summer not only reversed nearly 50 years of precedent that had enshrined abortion rights in the U.S., it created new fault lines and added fuel to one of America's most contentious debates. At the center of this battle are places like Carbondale, Illinois, what reporter Chris Kenning describes as a blue dot in a sea of red, a symbol of abortion rights in America today. Chris, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So, your report focuses on Carbondale, Illinois, a place you call a quiet college town. Tell me about Carbondale.
Sure. Carbondale is a town of about 22,000 people. It's in a rural part of southernmost Illinois. It was founded in the 1850s as a railroad junction. Later became the home of Southern Illinois University, and it's kind of a medical hub now. But it's still it's a quiet small town of neighborhoods and churches. But it also has a thriving LGBTQ community and a cannabis dispensary, and it's all centered in this downtown that's got a 1950s Dairy Queen that people line up for at night, and an Amtrak line that runs from New Orleans to Chicago. So, but really, it's one of its most important attributes is it's been a Democratic leaning outlier in this kind of more conservative, red rural area of Illinois.
So, Carbondale also happens to be accessible to 5 states where abortions are banned or otherwise unavailable. How did you and your team set your sights on Carbondale for this story?
Well, last summer after the Supreme Court struck down Roe v. Wade in the Dobbs decision, we knew that red state lawmakers across the South and the Midwest were going to push to enact restrictions and bans on abortion. So at the time, abortion providers were looking to figure out what to do. Were they going to cross state lines and reopen to keep serving their clients as best they could in as close proximity as they could? And so as these moves started to take place, we wanted to see kind of how this would play out in some of these small towns with opponents and providers and cities that were going to find this issue landing on their doorstep. And so we looked for a spot that might be especially pivotal to access. And Carbondale was located amid a lot of states that were going to ban or restrict abortion. And its location and as the southernmost point in an abortion rights state that kind of dips into the South was going to make it extra, pivotal and important.
Well, so this really interesting thing is that a year ago, there were no abortion providers there. So elective abortions, they hadn't been performed there or available since 1985. Now there are two, maybe a third coming soon. How did that come about?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It really began even before the leak of the decision happened last May. Jennifer Pepper, who's the CEO of Choices Clinic in Memphis, Tennessee, had been kind of eyeing Carbondale for a while. Lawmakers in Tennessee had passed restrictions over the years that included a trigger ban or trigger law, which would go into effect to effectively ban abortion if Roe ever fell. In May of 2021, when the court decided to take up the Dobbs case, which was the 15-week ban in Mississippi, and they said that they were going to rule on the constitutionality of all prohibitions on abortion before viability, Pepper decided that this court was looking to overturn Roe, and she needed to find a new location. And so she knew that Illinois was an abortion rights state, and she chose Carbondale for some of the reasons we talked about, that it was a kind of a liberal dot in this mostly conservative area, so might be more welcoming. And then at the same time, another clinic, the Alamo Women's Clinic, which was operating in San Antonio, Texas, and Tulsa, Oklahoma, was also deciding to open a clinic in Carbondale. So those got it started, and there's another one. The city officials say that we expect to see open later this year.
Well, you mentioned in your piece that these clinics are now the closest source for abortion care for over 1 million women from surrounding areas that effectively live in abortion deserts. How have these women been hearing about these clinics?
A lot of women, had to do a lot of searching online. In a lot of cases, it was uh, folks that these clinics were already serving from a number of states that had already restricted it quite a bit. For example, the directors of the Alamo Clinic had told me that, for a lot of their clients, this had just been like one thing after another because Texas, for example, banned abortion after roughly 6 weeks in 2021, and that meant that they couldn't serve a lot of the clients that they were serving. So they would send them like 9 hours away to their clinic in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then Tulsa passed a very restrictive ban. And then, a month later, the Supreme Court overturned Roe. So they had to completely stop. And it wasn't until November when they opened in Carbondale that they finally started serving those clients again.
Well, you spoke with some of the women who've been accessing abortion care in Carbondale, and I wonder if they were reluctant to share, eager to share their stories. What did they tell you?
One common theme was that they had faced an incredible challenge of getting there. I mean, like I say, these long drives, they had to get off work and find a ride or even a flight. They had to get childcare, some of them, and then there were the expenses of staying overnight for folks who wanted to do that. Another theme was that they would arrive and they often have to pass protesters, and once inside, a lot of folks I talked to felt like some of the anti-abortion protesters cast their decision to have an abortion as maybe blithe and not thought through. And they talked about how complex and personal these decisions were, and in some cases difficult. And I think they felt like that's lost in the political discourse about it. So
Well, abortion is obviously a polarizing and sensitive topic. What was the process of reporting this story like?
it really is a tough topic. I mean, um, I traveled there uh, in the summer, starting in the summer, and visited multiple times in the fall, winter, and the spring, talking to people over time. And I got, everyone there felt like the stakes were high for them in various ways. And but I think the fact that we could spend so much time there and we weren't just parachuting in and for a day, we were able to kind of gain trust.
You followed the story for a year, Chris. Did you sense that the community became more polarized during that time?
Some people said it caused more tensions in town among people of differing views. You saw some people putting up yard signs. You saw other people driving by clusters of a handful of demonstrators and giving them obscene gesture as they drove by. Um, and I think some people thought it reflected and reinforced some of these larger political blue-red divides that we see.
So, how are clinic leaders facilitating patient access for people who are traveling these great distances and or have limited funds?
Yeah, great question. I mean, a lot of people are being helped by abortion funds, which are nonprofits that are playing kind of an increasingly important role as women have to travel farther and farther for care. I spent time with one person who helps run the Midwest Access Coalition, which has been around for a few years, but they and this woman runs the hotline on some days out of a farmhouse in Illinois, and she's getting messages all day from women who need gas money, airfare, hotels. I remember one day, she was texting with a 24-year-old woman from Arkansas who had an appointment in Carbondale, and she was given $150 for gas, $40 for food, and a room at the Best Western in Carbondale, and that was going to be the difference maker about whether she was going to get there. But you know, this group and a lot of these abortion funds are swamped. I mean, the demand is really, really high. So, they said even with their help, they're seeing a lot of women wind up having to manage their own abortion through medication or wind up carrying an unwanted or even a dangerous pregnancy to term.
So I imagine Carbondale has also attracted a sizable group of the medical community who used to work in some of the regions where abortions have now been restricted or even eliminated. Were you able to talk to any of them?
One story that really stuck out to me was the administrator of the Alamo clinic decided to move herself and her entire family 14 hours north from San Antonio to Carbondale, place she'd not been to before, to help operate the clinic. She said, we're in the same position as these women are, like having to travel to preserve care and access. And she, wondered how that would look different for her. In a city of over 1 million, she saw protesters at work every day, but rarely out in the community. And she kind of wondered, well, will I see them at the grocery store, or at schools, or how will that look? And I think some other folks had some worries about that too. But generally, I think over time, staff and clinical staff found that they were really welcomed in the community.
Closest abortion destination clinics, they've become their own rapidly growing trend. Did you find other blue dot cities surrounded by red regions that have also stepped up to provide abortion access?
Yeah, it's happening in a number of small towns, where you see clinics moving, from West Wendover, Nevada, to Cumberland, Maryland, which is where a clinic that left West Virginia is set to open this month.
How does your story fit into the broader context of the battle around reproductive rights?
The movement of clinics across state lines is just one part of a of kind of a landscape of access that's still unfolding in a lot of ways. Nearly a year later, it's still kind of shifting. Right now, there are 14 states where abortions are banned or unavailable. Other states have enacted gestational limits, like six-week bans. Some of those are blocked by state courts currently. Places like Ohio. At the same time, voters and lawmakers in some states have worked to expand abortion rights, places like California, Illinois, Vermont, Oregon, New York. So, you still have some of these challenges kind of going through the courts. And another issue is the fight over medication abortion. That issue is still out there. And so there's just a lot of unknowns still.
What surprised you the most in reporting this story?
Well, a lot surprised me, but one thing that really kind of struck me and stuck with me is how oftentimes these abstract political debates that are abstract to a lot of folks really take on different dimensions when they're real and right in front of you, and that's kind of what happened to some folks in Carbondale. I remember talking to a clinic worker who was kind of new to the fields and wanted to be part of this effort, saying that when she would talk to the women that were coming in, and she was struck by how complicated and sometimes painful and difficult these decisions were, and it gave her a really more nuanced kind of perspective on the issue. And while I think it kind of reinforced this idea of blue-red political divides for a lot of people in town, others told me that because it was such a small town, they had to still see people and be around them and work with them, and they learned to stay friendly and look past some of those differences. And so I found that hopeful.
Chris, thank you so much for spending time today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for watching. I'm Dana Taylor. I'll see you next time.